This interview is being tape recorded at Brentwood Police Station on Thursday the 13th of June 1996, and the time by my watch is now 12:03 p.m. I'm Philip Norton, a detective constable from the Major Investigations Section at Police Headquarters, Chelmsford. There's another police officer in the room. I'm Detective Constable Dean Chappell, stationed at Southwood and Ferrers Police Station. Okay, you do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you fail to mention when questioned something which you later rely on in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence. Okay. Now, obviously, we've been involved in a fairly lengthy investigation which relates to the murder on the 6th of December of Patrick Tate, Tony Tucker and Craig Rolfe. You're probably aware that 2 men have been charged with their murders. Yes. In particular, one of those persons is well known to you. Yes. You've been arrested today by myself for attempting to pervert the course of justice and handling a stolen motor vehicle. Okay. I'll give you the opportunity now just to talk through anything that you wish to start with, and both of us will be asking you a lot of questions, I would imagine, throughout this interview. Okay. There's no pressure on you. Do you feel happy enough to talk to us? Yeah. Okay, so just start off. It may be easier for you to sort of pitch your mind back maybe 2 weeks prior to the deaths and just go through your movements. Okay. We'll pick up bits and pieces and we'll ask a bit more about your relationships. Shall I start with the car? If you want. Okay, I'll start with the car because that's quite straightforward. Okay, and what vehicle are we talking about? We're talking about a red Volkswagen Golf H registration. I don't know the rest of the registration number. H947 GVX, I think. That rings a bell, yeah, something like that. Okay, when Pat came out of prison, when was that? October 1995, at the end of October, I think it was, the 30th or the 31st. I'm not sure when he got me this car, but he came out of prison and stayed at 49 Gordon Road. He came back there, went off to a party that night with some friends. Were you living there at that time? I was actually living at 49 Gordon Road. On your own? Yeah, with my son. He's 2 years old. And that's Pat's son. He's Pat's son, yes. So he comes out of prison. Yeah, so he came out of prison, we'd broken up, but he was still paying my mortgage while he was in prison. We weren't together, we'd not been together for some time, but I asked if I could sell the bungalow and got into some sort of privately, rented property or something like that, because I didn't want to be with him anymore. And he said no, I had to keep the bungalow until he came out and that he would continue to pay the mortgage. And why had you not been with him, Sarah? Was it because he was put back in prison or were there other reasons? When he went to prison the first time, I waited for him. I fell pregnant on a home leave. But I already knew that I didn't want to be with him because he'd started to change. And I went on and had our son, and because I had our son, I thought we should make a go of it. Anyway, he came out and basically I didn't really see him. I heard stories of different things that he was up to and whatever, and he was sort of toing and froing all the time. He was out, then he got shot at 49 Gordon Road, and then I decided that was it. I couldn't do it anymore, and then we broke up. He went back to prison. The only time I think I saw him then was on Father's Day last year when I took our son to see him. Pat was in hospital, he'd been released from Whitemoor prison and he was in hospital. I took our son to see him on Father's Day. And I think another day, either before Father's Day or after Father's Day, I had no intentions of being with him. He knew that, but he had a drug problem and he didn't quite, take it in or whatever. So anyway, he came out of prison. I went on holiday with my sister the day after he came out. Well, he wanted us to be together and I didn't, so I thought the best way to do it was to go away for a week. I took my son to Portugal with my sister for a week, and then when I come back, he was really nasty and said that I couldn't live at the bungalow at 49 Gordon Road anymore and that he was going to live there. So I went and moved my stuff into the hostel in Basildon, just, to sort of get away from it all, because as I say, we didn't get on, and he sort of turned nasty because he wanted things to be right, and they weren't. I didn't actually live at the hostel. I left my clothes there and went to stay at my friend Sue. Pat didn't know where I was, but I would phone him now and again because I was going to rent a house, but I didn't have any money. He said that I had to sign the mortgage over to him, but I said that I couldn't do that because I didn't have anywhere to live. And he said he'd give me the money to go and put down on a house, because when you privately rent, you have to put down 2 months' rent. He said he'll let me have that, so I found somewhere which was in Great Gregory, and I moved in there, and Pat gave me the money. I think it was about £900 to put down a deposit. Okay, Sarah, what number, Great Gregory? 278. And that was rented accommodation? Yeah, that's where I was living when he was murdered. How long had you been living there? I think I moved in around November sometime. I'd only been there a couple of weeks, I think 2, 3 maybe. Yeah, 3 weeks. I can't remember where he gave me the golf. It might have been round the bungalow. I remember he was with Craig because he went with Craig to get the car, and he said he got me a nice little car to run around in until he'd sort me something else. But it had something wrong with the starter motor. It didn't start every time. So every now and again I'd ring him up and say, "Oh, have you got me a car yet?" And he'd say, "No, not yet, but I'm going to get you one." The day he was actually murdered, we had a row because I phoned him up and the car had broken down. I had to walk with my son and I was annoyed because he had a Mercedes, a nice car that he made me give all my bank details for. I didn't want to, give them to him, but he'd done it in my name. I said, "You've got yourself a car driving round and I haven't got one that works properly." He went mad and come round to my mum's house with Tony and Craig and just basically went mad and took the car away. Tony and Craig dragged him out of my mum's. They took the car away and that was the last time I saw him. I went back round to the bungalow and the car was parked in the lay-by from where he had taken it. So I went and got the keys. I can't remember where I got the keys from, possibly inside the bungalow or whatever, and just carried on using it. I was pulled up in it and it didn't have an MOT on it. Okay, Sarah, was that on that day? Not on that day, a few days before that actually, when I was driving. I was with my friend Sue and I got pulled up in it because it didn't have an MOT or tax. Pat told me it did have MOT, but he was going, "Don't bother to tax it because I wouldn't have it for long." Anyway, I got the car back again. I took it down to his car site to Bill to get it MOT'd. He got me a year's MOT on it and I didn't have any money to tax it. I did send off for a logbook because I didn't have a logbook for it. When did you send that off? I don't know. Before his death or after? It would have definitely been afterwards because I didn't have the money to tax it before anyway. So it definitely would have been afterwards. Then I phoned up the DVLA or whatever it's called and said, "Oh, I'm waiting for my logbook." And they said, "Oh, are you sure you've got the right registration number on it?" And I said, "Yes, I think so. I'll check, I'll get back to you." So I phoned, I think, Brendan Foy. He's in the CID at Basildon, who I've got to know through all of this, and said to him, "I think there's something wrong with the car," because the lady had asked me to check the registration and I drove it back round to the bungalow. I wasn't living there. I just drove it back round there and parked it on the driveway. Then it was just left there waiting for the police to come round and check it over. Okay, Sarah, what were you thinking at that time then? Well, I thought obviously there's something wrong with it, that Pat's just given me a car. I actually asked Donna, I don't know her surname, Tony Tucker's girlfriend. I said, "Do you know where Pat got the car from?" "Is that Donna with the long dark hair?" "Yeah, that's it." "Quite a young girl?" "Yeah." And she said, "No. It was just parked up on the driveway for weeks and no one came round to see it." Michael Steele said to me, "Have you got a logbook for the car?" I said, "No, I'm waiting for the police to come and see it." I was actually selling the bungalow at the time. I think Mick said to me that a friend of his wanted a car for spares or whatever, and he'd give me £400 for it. I didn't have any money, so I said, "Yeah, okay, have it." I was selling the bungalow. I had nowhere for it to go. So I just let him have it for £400. You mentioned DC Foy. What was your conversations with him about the car? I can't remember, to be honest. I just phoned him up and said, "I think there's something wrong with the car. Can you get someone to come round and look at it?" As I say, it was parked there for a while and no one come. So, I was selling the bungalow the day the officer actually came round to have a look at it. I was literally just moving my last stuff out. I had nowhere for the car to go. I needed the money, so I took the £400 for it, for the parts or whatever. And Mick's friend, I don't know who it was, but he said he's got a friend of his that wanted it, so... So did DC Foy tell you anything specifically about the car and what to do with it and what not to do with it? No, he just asked me where it had been. And I said, "Well, I'll just leave it open. I don't know. I left the keys in the boot." I may have done, I don't know. But I said, "Oh, I'll leave it open on the driveway of 49 Gordon Road. So at their convenience, they could go round and look at it." I think I phoned him once or possibly twice and said, "It's still here. What's happening with it?" I can't remember the actual conversations. He just said that they were busy and they would get round to look at it when they could. Okay, Sarah, what about not selling it? I wasn't told not to sell it, no. Did you tell him that you had a buyer for it? No. As I say, it was just left on the driveway and I was selling the bungalow. I had nowhere for it to go, and I needed the money, so I just did it. Right, now the reason you've been arrested for that, okay, in relation to that, is because it is a stolen motor vehicle and it's on false plates, as you're probably aware. Yes. And DC Foy will say that he told you not to sell that motor vehicle. Right. What do you say about that? I can't recall that he said that. I mean, he would have, Sarah. He would have been quite specific. Did he explain to you the circumstances in relation to handling stolen goods? No, not at all. There wasn't anything made of the car, to be honest with you. It was like nothing. It was like, okay, we'll get someone round to look at it. As I say, I did ring. You can ask other people and confirm that I did call and say, look, it's still here. I'm selling the place and I've got nowhere to put it. You know, and someone offered me £400 for it. I was going to take it. I had no money, so I just did it. Right, okay. I didn't realise it was a crime because, I mean, I thought it was just going for spares. Obviously, I thought there may be something wrong with it. You thought there was something wrong with it? Does that mean that you thought it was a stolen vehicle? Well, I didn't necessarily think it was a stolen vehicle, but I did think there was something wrong with it. I don't know what, but I certainly thought that there was something wrong with it. But I thought if it's not important for the police to come round and look at it, and it's been standing here for weeks, you know. Okay, Sarah, just going on from there, because obviously, as you quite rightly say, in respect of what else was going on, although it is important, but you do know that I didn't go in and steal a car or anything. It was given to me. That's not the allegation, Sarah. Okay. No, I mean, there is no suggestion that you've gone out and stolen a motor vehicle. No, let's be clear on that. Right, okay. But you mentioned there in quite a good description of what's happening in relation to your car and Michael Steele. Is this a good time to discuss how you got to know him? Okay. How deep is the relationship? Go through that for me. Right, when Pat was in prison in Swaleside, I think, obviously I used to go and visit and I got friendly with a lady there called Jackie, who's Michael Steele's common law wife. I used to have a horse when I was younger, and she used to own the riding stables where I used to ride my horse. Where was that? At Longwoods in Basildon. She used to own that. Yeah, when she was married to Phil Street, I think. So anyway, I recognised Jackie and we sort of got chatting, and she knew my auntie because my auntie had horses, and Pat used to talk about this guy Mick that he'd met in prison. And so the four of us just sort of become friends. Was Mick in prison with Pat at that time? He was in prison, sorry, yeah. So Jackie was visiting Mick? Yeah, and so obviously I'd sort of spend an hour or whatever outside talking to Jackie, and we'd go in, you know, each have our visits. We'd come out and have a chat about whatever. From there they moved to Blantyll House, and they were both moved there. I think that Pat was in the same cell as Mick. Mick used to teach him computers and stuff there. From there they even went somewhere else together. I can't remember the name of the place, in Suffolk. It was a prison, another prison anyway. Whitemoor? Not Whitemoor, no. It was an open prison. Not Hollesley Bay. Hollesley Bay, they were both together, yeah. We all just become very good friends, yeah. Probably more myself with Mick and Jackie more than Pat did, because, you know, Mick came out of prison a year before Pat did. And what time are we talking about? How many years ago? 4 years? I've possibly known them 4 or maybe 5 years. So about 1992, you would say? Yeah, it must be 4 or 5 years now, probably, I'd say. But as I say, I'm very good friends with them, yeah. How did that sort of develop then? Well, Mick came out and I sort of go down there sometimes. They live near Clacton. I used to go and visit them sometimes. They'd come and visit me. They'd always make sure that I was okay for money and things. They were wonderful to my son, just wonderful to him. He thinks the world of them. Okay, Sarah, you say they. Was it more Jackie or was it both of them? Both of them. They've both been sort of like parents, if you like. They were really lovely. When Pat went back inside, they came down a couple of times. I think when Pat came out of prison, I did him something to eat on a few occasions. But Pat wasn't really there. It was just my friendship really that developed more than anything. Okay, Sarah, so if it helps, just sort of put it in a timeline then if you can. So Mickey Steele's out, Jackie Street and you're around, then Pat comes out. Does the whole atmosphere change when Pat comes out? Well, not really. I mean, they came down and stayed more than a couple of times. They came down a couple of times for something to eat, you know, like with the 4 of us. And everything's all right? You're all getting on? Oh, great, yeah, great. So when are we talking about now then, Sarah? 94 this would have been. Right, and when did Pat come out in 94? July. Okay. Yeah, it's July, June. Yeah, June 1st, and he went back in, was it December? Didn't he? 94? Basically, Pat was shot in December, wasn't he? Okay, so just talk about that period then between the time Pat came out and the time Pat went back, you know, back in prison again. What was happening? I mean, we were talking about Mickey Steele, but what's happening in your life and who's playing a major part, that sort of stuff? Right, well, I was living at 49 Gordon Road. Pat wasn't there very often, as I say. I mean, I'd heard different stories about different women and whatever. Anybody in particular? Yeah, he was going out with prostitutes, and apparently he'd set up this prostitute ring with his mother, and his mother was running. And I found out through a friend of mine. Pat just denied everything, like always. You say prostitutes, I mean, are they girls that you would have known that he had hired, or? Well, yeah, I didn't know them, but he had a prostitute business, yeah. So he was controlling it? Yes. And taking money for it? Yeah, I mean, he denied it all to me all the time. And so, who was his main male friends at this time? Well, he didn't really know Tony and Craig. I don't think he knew Craig at all, actually. But he didn't really know Tony that well. And when Pat first came out, I think he was with my friend's husband, Steve Miller, in a cafe in Southend. And this is when it all started. This is when Pat just, got even more wild than he was anyway. He bumped into Tony Tucker and Craig in a cafe in Southend. And Tony apparently said about going out one night. And that's when, he started to get really, really wild. And once he got in with that lot. What do you mean by really wild? Well, just taking drugs. And I know he was injecting drugs, and I've since heard he was on heroin, but I didn't know that at the time. And obviously he was, actually addicted to heroin, but threatened people not to tell me. Okay, Sarah, so you mentioned there that everyone was threatened that he couldn't tell you. What do you mean by threatened? Well, I say threatened, I mean, Russell said to me that he'd been to Russell's, Pat's brother, and that he'd begged him not to tell me. He said, didn't you know he was addicted to heroin? I said, no. And he said that he used to beg him not to tell me because he knew that would be the end of it. I actually took him to see a drug rehabilitation psychiatrist man in Southend, thinking that it would help him get off it and everything, but it didn't. As I say, I didn't realise it was heroin, he just laughed at it. He sort of sat there for an hour or whatever. I don't know the man's name, but he sat there for a good hour or whatever and just sort of come out and laughed. They were sitting in there talking about how to take different drugs with this man, and he seemed quite impressed about how much Pat knew about drugs, to be honest with you. Okay, so taking it from there then, does he now ignore you a bit more, or? Oh, definitely, yeah. I mean, he wanted it to work with me and him, but he just couldn't, He just liked that life too much. I wasn't happy with him, and he just wanted to go out and have a good time, and I didn't want to do that. I mean, I went out a couple of times with Tony and Anna, but they weren't my sort of friends. They weren't, they were his friends, and I didn't really want to have anything to do with them. Pat sort of had other girlfriends that, did that, so that's what he did. Okay, so we're talking about the period of time when he came out to when he got shot, is that correct? 94, yeah. So how are things? I mean, is he still friends with Mickey and Jackie? Oh, definitely, yeah, definitely. Okay, so there were no problems or no animosity? No, none at all. So was it a shock when Pat got shot? Did it come out of the blue? No, it didn't. Stephen Ellis, he was more or less living in Southend, I think. I was a good friend with Nipper. I think they had a few fallings out, and I don't think Nipper liked the way he treated me or whatever. Nipper didn't like the way Pat treated you. Yeah, but then I think Tony and Craig and Donna and all of them used to go to parties with prostitutes, I think, as well, in Nipper's flat. He used to keep his flat nice and tidy, and they just apparently ruined it, which Nipper didn't obviously like. Then as far as I know, a phone call was made by Tony Tucker's Donna. Was it Donna Garwood to Nipper asking where Tony was? Then I think Nipper made some sort of silly comment, but he was always making silly comments. And I think Donna got in touch with Tony and told him what Nipper had said. Do you know the substance of that call, Sarah? Yeah, I think it was something like Tony's back indoors with his wife or in bed or whatever. And I think it was a bit more detailed than that, but like as a joke. You could certainly say it was a joke because, he was like that. And Tony just took it the wrong way. Tony didn't like Pat to have friends anyway. I don't think he particularly liked Nipper. I think he probably saw him as a threat, and he used that to sort of run him down because Pat was good friends with him. And I think they started going around there ransacking his place and threatening him. I think that Tony put a knife to his throat, or not a knife. I think it may have even been a gun. This is what Nipper told me afterwards. I think he had a gun put to his head or in his mouth or something, and just basically they made his life a misery. He was really scared. I didn't actually realise how bad it was, to be honest. It was Tony's birthday, and Pat said about going to Tony's birthday party. We weren't together, and I said I didn't want to go. And he said I had to. So I dropped my son off at my mum's and got ready because, you didn't say no to him. When Pat said you had to do something, you had to do it. So I was getting ready when he got shot. So where were you living at this time, Sarah? I was living at the bungalow at 49 Gordon Road. Where was Pat then? He was at 49 Gordon Road. Sorry, I mean, he'd been living sort of here, there and everywhere, even at Nipper's flat. And since this trouble had happened with Nipper, he would come back there and, he'd disappear for a couple of weeks, then come back and sit and cry and say, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be like that anymore. I'm going to be like this. I'm going to get help. and go back to how I used to be. I'd sit there and believe it, and then he'd stay a day and then he'd go off again. This time he'd come back and we were meant to be going to Tony's birthday, and as I say, he got shot. It was on whose birthday? Tony Tucker's. It was meant to be Tony Tucker's birthday. We was meant to be going somewhere in Dagenham, So you were at 49 Gordon Road with Pat? Yeah. I think I phoned the police, and then Pat phoned, before the police got there, he phoned Tony to get them all round. We went down to the hospital, Tony, me, Craig and Peter Cuthbert. He was another good friend of his. They all turned up. Okay, Sarah, so did you know at that stage why he'd been shot? No, I don't think Pat knew. He says he did, but I don't think he knew who it was. I can't really remember. I don't know how long he was in hospital. It must have been a couple of weeks or something, but in that time I used to take my son down to visit him, and I'd walk there and there'd always be 100 people around the bed, and they'd moved him to a private room in Basildon Hospital. I think just to get him off the ward, because every time I went in there was all ill people in there, and I suppose everyone complained and got him into a private room. Did Mickey still visit him? Oh yeah. While he was in hospital? Yeah, definitely. I don't know how many times, but certainly I know once or twice because I was there. I may have even have gone there with them one time. I'm not sure, but I certainly remember seeing them there. And then he was arrested, wasn't he? I mean, I used to go down there and the nurses used to say to me, "What's a nice girl like you doing with someone like that?" As soon as you walk out the door of your little boy, he has girls sitting on the bed. And obviously I didn't go down there much after that. Then he was arrested for having a gun, I think, wasn't he? And apparently they were taking drugs in their room. Then he went to prison. Were you pleased about that? Oh no, I wasn't pleased about it, no. I didn't want to be with him, but I didn't wish any harm on him or anything. Were you with Mark at this stage? No, I wasn't, no. I've been with Mark a year now, just a year. So that takes us up to when, Sarah? December 94? And you're still living at Gordon Road? Yeah. Still friends with Mickey and Jackie? Jackie, yeah. And they're, by all accounts, still friendly with Pat? Yeah. Does Mickey still and Jackie at this stage know Tony, or is it mainly Pat? Mainly Pat. When Pat came out this time, I've been in Pat and Tony's company while Mick and Jackie have been there because Tony arranged a little party for Pat when he came out the last time. Where was that? At this place in Dagenham again? I don't know. I've never been there. Okay, Sarah, what type of place? I think it's a snooker room or something. I'm not really sure. I've never been there, as I say. But that's where they used to go when they had someone's birthday or some kind of gathering. Tony had arranged this party for Pat there anyway, and Mick and Jackie went to that on his homecoming. I was invited, but I didn't go. Okay. So he goes back into prison? Yeah. He didn't get charged with any offences, did he? No. They recalled him because of his parole, is that right? Yeah. So then where did he go? Well, when he was out, I did lie to his probation officer regularly, as he was meant to be abiding by his conditions and living here. And he used to say that you've got to say I was here last night, that sort of stuff. So you were telling the probation officer that he was still with you at 49 Gordon Road? Yes. So as far as the probation officer was concerned, you were trying to sort yourselves out? Yeah, I think at the end of it, I told her the truth. I think she thought that he was with me the whole time. And as I say, he wasn't. Right, so Pat goes back to prison? Yeah. Do you know where he goes? Whitemore. I don't know if he went there straight away though. Right, but you're not with Mark? No. I mean, where is Mark? Is he on the scene at all? No, not at all. I've known Mark for years. So you've got no other boyfriends? No, I've not. So it was purely the fact that you and Pat weren't getting on. There were no other boys on the side? No. Causing friction? No. If there had been, I would never have told Pat anyway. So even at this stage, November 94, when he goes into jail, you still remain faithful to Pat? Oh yeah, definitely. Yes, definitely. 100%. There was nobody ever involved. It was just the fact that he had changed and I didn't want to be with him. But I mean, certainly not. So there was nobody else dragging you away from him, as you say? No, definitely not. But at this stage, not wanting to be too blunt, was there anything between you and Mickey at this stage? Anything? What do you mean? Well, anything of a sexual nature? No, not at all. Never has been. Okay. I'm friends with his wife. Not anything like that at all. But it has been mentioned by people during the inquiry that this could be the case, and that has to be a question I ask you. Absolutely 100% not. He's like a dad to me. Right, that's fine. Yeah, not at all. Not at all. Okay, so Pat goes back into prison at Whitemore. Do you visit him? No, not at all. So you just cut him off? Yeah. Was that by your choice? Definitely, yes. Was he writing to you? I don't think so, no. We spoke on the phone now and again because obviously I had the mortgage, but usually we'd communicate through Mick and Jackie. Every time Pat and myself seemed to talk, we just end up in a big bust-up, so we'd communicate through Mick and Jackie. First of all, I think that Tony Tucker was holding some of Pat's money. I'm not sure if I said it through Mick and Jackie or I was just considering it myself, but I wanted to sell the bungalow. I wanted to cut all ties with him, you know. I just wanted to move away from it all. Was it your bungalow? It was in my name, yeah. Okay, Sarah, and who paid for it? Pat paid for it. Was it a deposit? Yes. He paid the deposit and the mortgage. Yes, the deposit I think was around £3,000. And he paid for that? Yeah. And what sort of mortgage did he have on it? An endowment mortgage. So are you both named on the mortgage? No, we're both named on the endowment, but the mortgage, it was purely my mortgage. Was that always going to be the case in relationship to the endowment? Well, we'd spoken about breaking up and Pat had said he'd continue to pay the mortgage, but that was when he had his nice head on, and then he'd turn nasty and say that he wasn't, so I just said I wanted to sell it and just go and get a council place. But that's slightly unusual because the mortgage is in your name, but the endowment's in both, is that right? Yes. How did that happen then? Well, because when I got the mortgage, Pat was in prison. I was working and Pat was in prison, so we weren't going to put his name on it. I mean, he couldn't get a mortgage because he wasn't working. Right. Why weren't you just on the endowment then? Why was he added? Because we had our son. Right. I don't know who suggested it, probably him, I would have thought. So that if anything were to happen to either of us, then our son would be looked after. It was that sort of thing. When was that discussed then? Would that have been through communication whilst he was still in prison? Yeah, I would have thought so. I can't remember. It was before he came out when I got the mortgage. I think he was still in prison when I got the mortgage. Right. Certainly when I first applied for the mortgage, because I applied for the mortgage 6 months, 9 months possibly, before I got 49 Gordon Road. Because I was going to get another place at Kingswood on the Woodhams estate. I was going to buy a place there. Who was that going to be for? Yourself and Pat again? Yes, yeah. And whose name would that have gone in? That would have gone in my name. Okay, so the reason you're saying for the joint endowment was because you had your son? Yeah. And I take it that should anything happen to either of you, then your son would be taken care of? That's right, yeah. So did you decide this before you approached the mortgage company that you'd both be on the endowment? No, not at all. In fact, it wasn't even anything. I don't think it was even spoken about at length. It was just a thing I was going to get an endowment on it, you know. I can't even remember talking about it, to be honest. Because obviously he was in prison, so you must have been doing the main arranging. Of course, yeah. Going to see people and arranging things. Yeah, yeah. And sat down and discussed it with whoever's going to be selling you the endowment? Yeah. So did you fill out the form and then Pat fill out forms later, or did you wait and both go together? We both went together. Right, and what did he have, a day out or? No, he was out by this time, yeah. Was that on home leave? No, just out. Permanently, yeah, on his parole. So that wasn't actually done, you hadn't mortgaged the place or bought the place prior to Pat leaving prison? No, it may have been already going through. It may have been. I'm not sure. Right, okay, so we're going to have a little break there, Sarah. Okay, Sarah, just remembering where we were up to. We were starting to talk about the fact that Pat went inside again. Yeah. And about the relationship with Nipper and what caused all of it. Yes. That Mickey and Jackie were liaising between you and Pat because things had broken down as far as you were concerned, and Gordon Road had got to be sold for you to go your own way. And we were starting to talk about the endowment policy and how that all occurred. Yes. Have you got any more questions or anything else you'd like to add in relation to the mortgage or the endowment that was set up? Not really, because it wasn't really a big issue. But I mean, if there's anything you want to ask about it. Who did you set the endowment through? Through Rothschilds in London. I had a mortgage broker. Right. Okay, Sarah, and that's the one that you've had trouble with. That's it. And they won't pay out. That's it, yeah. But there was no intention at the time or nothing said by Pat that he ought to be on it because he feared for his safety? Oh, absolutely not. No. No. So it was purely at that stage, nothing deliberate to put you both on the endowment? Of course not. No. It was just for your son's sake if anything were to happen. Yeah. And it wasn't even made an issue of. It was just done because it would have been a joint mortgage at the time. But you were both there, you both signed up to it? Yes. And the forms were filled out with both of you being present? Yes. Yeah. Right, so it wasn't the intention when you first set out to get the mortgage, but it became an intention when you talked about it, is that correct? Yeah, but it wasn't a big deal. As I say, the mortgage would have been in joint names as well. It was only the fact that I was working and Pat wasn't, so fine. So the circumstances continue then. You're on your own, living at 49 Gordon Road. Pat's been shot and arrested and his parole revoked. And Mickey and Jackie are now talking to you via him, is that correct? Yeah. Right, so it's a two-way communication because things have broken down between the two of you. Yeah, I mean, Pat and myself did talk, but he would just go after Handel. I used to go after Handel quite a few times as well about different things, but we just didn't get on. If there was anything to be discussed, then he'd phone Mick and Jackie and say, can you tell Sarah this or whatever, you know. Was there anything that you knew of particularly that caused you to break down a relationship with Pat? I mean, was there any violence? No. He didn't beat me or anything. I mean, yeah, he was violent, but he didn't beat me or anything. But I don't really want to talk about that because he's not here. I mean, if he hit me once, he was a very big man. He would have killed me anyway. I mean, he'd push me and different things, but not beat me, no. Okay, a fairly dominant man? Yeah, very. He was always dominant anyway. When I met him, he was dominant. It's just that he changed. I only ever used to see his nice side. And then I'd hardly ever saw his horrible side, so you know. He was nice, but it was the drugs that turned him. I take it that that was when he started to change. It was at that point when you started to not like him as such and wanted to pull away? Yeah, yeah, yeah. And before then, obviously, you were getting on quite well? Yeah. So during the time then he's at Whitemore, what's happening then in your life and the relationship with Mickey and Jackie in particular and Pat and the business? I don't know about the dates of this, but Tony Tucker used to come round, I think, once a week and give me money for bills and to look after our son and whatever. I remember Pat telling me he had heard that Tony got a new house, the bungalow he had bought in Fobbin, and Pat didn't like it very much because he thought that possibly that his money was going towards Tony's house, and he asked Mick if he could make up some excuse to get his money off Tony. I'm not sure what Mick said, but I think it was something along the lines of he had a fine to pay off the mortgage, and that was that. Pat trusted Mick more than Tony. So Mick approached Tony on his own, did he? I don't know. I didn't have anything to do with that. I assume he did, but I don't know. You weren't there? No, I wasn't there. You weren't party to the money changing hands? No. How did you become aware then that the money had changed hands? Well, I knew because Mick started paying me instead of Tony. Right. Mick started giving me money each week. But that was Pat's money. It was Pat's money, yeah. How much was that? Well, about £200 a week. For how long? The time he was away, that was to pay the mortgage. Do you know how much Tony gave Mickey? I don't know. It must have been a substantial amount. Well, it must have been to give me that each week, yeah, but as I say, I didn't want to have the money anyway. I wanted to sell the place, but that's what Pat wanted to do, so that's what I did. So that was from December to when Pat came out? No, it wasn't from December. Tony, as I say, was giving me some money, and then I'm not sure what month it was, but it went on for 3 or 4 months that Tony was giving it to me, and then Mick gave it to me through the summer. Right, so Mickey was responsible for giving you at least £200 a week? Yeah, up until October. Yeah, that's right. So let's say that's 8 months that Mickey was giving it to you? Yeah, I mean, it wasn't always paid in cash. Sometimes it was put into my bank account. Where was that bank account? Lloyd's Bank, at Rettendon. In your name? Yeah, in my name. I've got all the statements. And how did he pay it into your account? Cash, I would have thought. Right, and you were happy with that setup? Well, no, I wasn't, because I didn't want that to happen. I wanted to get away from the bungalow and start by myself. I knew I couldn't make another life whilst I was still taking money off Pat. But that's what I had to do. I wasn't happy with that, but that's what I did. So that's Christmas 94 into the early part of 95 now then, is that correct? Yeah, that's right. So Tony's giving the money to Mickey and Mickey's paying out. Even Pat had to tell Tony that we were still together. He said, you've got to tell him we're still together. So I even went as far as to tell Tony. But as I say, all the time Pat knew that we weren't together. Why was Tony asking that then? I don't know. I think it was because he was coming round to give me the money at the time. And I suppose he wouldn't want to do that if we weren't together. I mean, I wanted to tell everybody we weren't together. But Pat didn't want that because he said to me that we'd sort it out when he came out. And that was that. What did you say to him about that then? Just that I wanted to get on with my own life and wanted things different for my son and myself. Did he accept that, do you think? He said he did. Sometimes I thought he did, and then other times he'd tell me what to do. He just didn't want to believe it, so... Right, so it's 95 started now then. I mean, is there anything in particular that we need to talk about before Pat comes out? I mean, had things started to happen? Yeah, I'd met somebody else. Mark in June last year. As I say, I'd known him anyway, and we started to see each other sometimes. How did all that start then? You were still living at Gordon Road? I was still living at Gordon Road, yeah. But I was just so fed up with staying in all the time and not having a life, so I started going out locally with my brother and my friends. I bumped into Mark and we were friends anyway and we got chatting. Then we went out a couple of times and obviously I told him about Pat. He'd never met Pat. He'd heard about him from other people. But then we sort of secretly started to see each other. But it was only a secret because it wasn't anything I was ashamed of or anything. It was just because of what Pat would do if he found out. And where was Mark living at that time? He was living at the Vale in Basildon. I used to go round to his flat sometimes and things. We didn't go out together, obviously, because it was quite important that no one knew, because I think Pat wouldn't have accepted it. While he was in prison? Yeah. So it was for fear of Mark's safety rather than anything else? Yeah, looking back on it now, it was a really silly thing to do. I should have just waited until Pat was out and had his own life sorted, but I just thought, well, if Pat can have girlfriends, then surely I can do the same. Was that Mark's own place there then? Yeah. Was that rented? No, it was his own place. He still got it. He rented it out because it was getting closer and closer to Pat coming out, and he was getting worried because a couple of his friends said, oh, you know what'll happen if he finds out. So Mark rented a place in Shenfield. I think the week Pat came out, or the week before. Okay, so eventually Pat comes out. Yeah, Pat comes out. Did anything happen in the previous week to him coming out, or the previous days? Yeah, Pat was actually really friendly. He asked me to go shopping for him and get him some clothes and some shoes. So was that by phone, or letters, or... Phone, I think. I can't remember. And this was to be purchased on your credit card? Yeah, so he'd reimburse me. He didn't have credit cards or anything, so he'd reimburse me when he came out. So I went and got him a few bits. As I say, he was having this sort of party, his coming out party that Tony was arranging. You knew about that? Oh yeah. I was invited to it. Pat invited me to it, but I said no. The day he came out, I'd heard Ian Spindler was going to the party with Pat, and I asked Ian's girlfriend to come and stay with me when Pat came out because I was a bit worried. I didn't really want to be there on my own with him, so she came with her little girl. So who was that? Ian Spindler's girlfriend. Common law wife, whatever. What was her name? Lisa. I don't know her surname. Right. Was the coming out party that same evening? That evening, yeah. Do you remember what date that was? It was either October 30th or 31st, I'm not sure. Right. How did Pat come out? Did someone go and get him? Tony went to get him, yeah. I don't know who else was there. They'd hired a car. I think there'd been other people in the car as well, but I think they dropped them off. I can't remember. But certainly Tony was there, and Peter Cuthbert came round to 49 Gordon Road as well. I don't think he was in the car that brought him back from prison. I think he was just in his own car. So from prison they came round to where you were? Yeah. With Lisa? Yeah. Ian Spindler, was he around with Lisa? Yeah. I'm not sure if he went to pick him up or if he was at the bungalow, I can't remember, but yeah, he was certainly there. Mickey? No. Jackie? No. Right. They came down in the evening. To Gordon Road? Yeah, they may have come down in the afternoon. I'm not really sure, but they certainly came down because they went to the party. They came round to the bungalow and then went to the party. Was Pat aware then that you weren't going to go? He knew I didn't want to go. I think he invited me the day before. He was obviously excited that he was coming out. He said, if you want to come and all that. I just said no thanks because that would have given him the wrong impression if I'd gone. Yeah. I can't remember if it was that day that we went up the Crown for lunch. It might have been. I'd have to check with Ian and Lisa. Lisa came with us with Mick and Jackie and the kids as well. I think it's that day. With Pat and Ian? No, they all went off and done their bit, went to a party or whatever. And I think they're possibly already gone. I think they all went up to Tony's bungalow first and left me and Lisa with the kids. Then Mick and Jackie came round, and like I say, I think it was that day that we went to the Crown and all had a few drinks. Their parties used to go on for a couple of days, not usually just that night. And Mickey and Jackie at this stage, are they taking sides at all in the relationship? No, not at all. They're, as I say, neutral. They'd stayed in the middle, they had stayed friends with both of us. They weren't getting cheesed off with either one of you because of what had happened? No. Or any particular incident? I think it used to get on their nerves a bit, but I'd moan about him, he'd probably moan about me, but that's relationship for you, isn't it? Certainly when you break up, things aren't nice anyway, are they? Anyway, I think we went for lunch and they went off to the party. Mick and Jackie also went after being up the Crown with us. It was probably early evening or something like that. Then the next morning around 8 a.m, the door was knocking and it was Pat, which we were really surprised about because usually they go on for a couple of days, their parties, and he said he didn't feel very well and wanted to come in and lay down. I think he was on his own. I think Ian came round later. Sorry, when was this? This was the day after he came out. They'd gone to the party and Pat had got dropped off because he said he felt ill. So you were on your own? No, I wasn't. I asked my friend Lisa to stay with me. Right, okay. I just took it that he didn't feel ill, but he just wanted to come back and make things all right with me and him. But I didn't want that anyway. I can't remember what was said or anything, but he just went to bed in my bedroom and I just got some bits together and went out. Pat was in bed, I think, for a couple of days ill. I think he had the flu or something like that. So you were around Gordon Road then, or had you gone? I can't remember. It's all a bit of a blur, to be honest, but certainly I stayed there for one night when Pat was there. I stayed out on the settee and he was ill in bed because he said, oh, I didn't care about him and all that sort of stuff. I just wanted to go, but I couldn't just go because of the way he was. He had just gone mad and seen it like I didn't care about him. I think he stayed in bed and I slept on the settee. I was going to Portugal, I think, the next day. It was only about 2 days after he had come out that I went to Portugal. So I stayed there and did some ironing and packing and stuff. He walked out of the bedroom a couple of times and had the ump because I was going away. But as I say, I was going away because I wanted him to get himself sorted. He'd actually said to me he was going to find somewhere else to live. What day of the week did you go on holiday? Oh, I haven't got a clue. So was it within the first few weeks of Pat coming out? Yeah, we went away for a week. I phoned my mum a couple of times and Pat had gone round there for dinner a couple of times. My mum had sort of felt sorry for Pat. She said, oh, you know he's ill because of the drugs and everything. She said he'd been to the doctors. I don't know what was wrong with him, but I think he just had the flu, to be honest. I'd given Pat my key for the bungalow, as I always left a spare key round my mum's. And straight from the airport, we went to my mum's to get the key back to the bungalow and it was gone. I said to Mum, where's the key? She said, I don't know. And Martin, who's my mum's husband, said, oh, Pat came round and took it. He said he'd lost his key. So I phoned Pat up from there and said, where's the key? Are you going to be in? And he just said, you're not going back there anymore. He said, you can come back here when I want you. And he just, it changed. I'd been away for a week. He didn't like that and turned nasty. But I think it's probably more Tony's influence saying, don't let her do that to you, sort of thing. I said, I need to get our son's stuff. And he just said, it was tough. So where did you stay then? I was going to my dad's at Malden, but I didn't have a car. So I think I stayed at my friend Sue's. I think I stayed there from that time on. It was just nasty between Pat and myself. Now and again he'd be nice and he'd turn nasty again. I had to go round there because I had some of my stuff there. So I'd go round there and there'd be different girls there or whatever. Who were the girls? One of them was Lizzie, I don't know her other name. There was a young girl with short black hair that used to do the cleaning for Pat round there. Where was Mark? I wasn't seeing Mark at this time. I spoke to him a few times on the phone. Obviously, I'd phone him up when I was on holiday, but we'd said that we'd call it and see each other when everything was sorted out properly between Pat and myself. In fact, the last time I saw Mark was the night Pat died, because my mum was babysitting for me and we went to Holland's Wine Bar in Shenfield. We had seen each other then. So the last time you would have seen him, was it just before Pat came out? Yeah, as I say, I don't think we saw each other. It was a few weeks anyway, certainly a couple of weeks. Then maybe we saw each other once or something. I used to stop at phone boxes and ring him up and things like that. I mean, we didn't carry on seeing each other like we did anyway. Did you not have your own phone at that time? A mobile or a home phone? I did. I didn't have a mobile. I did have a mobile that was in my name, but Pat had to take it back off me when he came out. Right. I wanted to cancel that when he was away, but he said no, I had to keep it on for him when he came out. So was Mickey and Jackie still talking to Pat at this stage? Yeah. They were all right? Yeah, definitely. They helped me move. All my friends were too scared to help me. So how long was that after you come back from holiday? It was probably about another week, I would have thought. So you living at your mum's? No, I was at Sue's, but Pat didn't know where I was. And Sue is just a friend of yours? Yeah. I'd go round to sort of see Pat sometimes. He'd be all nice and try and cuddle me and say, we should be friends and everything. I wouldn't agree with his advances. Sometimes he'd get funny and then he'd be nice again, but it was just the drugs. Did he get violent with you at all during that stage? A couple of times, but as I say, he didn't ever beat me or anything. I mean, yeah, he was certainly aggressive now and again, but he never punched me or anything like that. So what were his thoughts about your son at that time? Did he still want to keep in contact? He said to my mum that he still wanted to see his son, but he really wasn't interested in him. Tony Tucker thought his son was wonderful because he looked like Pat, and it was a bit of a showpiece to him. They'd lift him up and say, doesn't he look like Pat? Pat said he was getting himself sorted out, but he didn't make any attempt to see him. He saw him a few times when he was out, but only when I took him round there when I was collecting things. So at that stage then, when the two of you are separated, he kicked you out of 49 Gordon Road? No, he didn't kick me out as such. He said to me I can stay there if I wanted to stay with him, unless I could leave on his say-so. Where did you see your relationship going then? With Pat? Yeah, could you see there was an end to it, or...? Oh, definitely, I'd seen an end to it for a long time. It'd been over for a long, long time, but he was just making it final. I think when he was in prison, his mind was different. He was probably thinking, oh, she thinks this now, but when I get out, it'll be okay. But he didn't really want to be with me. I mean, he had other girlfriends. He didn't particularly want to be with me. But it was just that he didn't want to be told by me that I was finishing the relationship, you know? It was his ego, if you like. I don't think he particularly loved me anymore anyway. It was just because he couldn't handle being told. Okay. So, moving it on to the day you move out of Gordon Road, just tell us how that all happened. Well, I've got in touch with Mick and Jackie and said, would you mind moving me? I think it was Mick who rang Pat and said, did he mind if they moved me? And he obviously said no. And they took you to Gordon Road, did they? Or, I don't know, I may have met them round there. I think I possibly met them round there because I had the Golf at the time and I'd loaded lots of bits and pieces into that. Was Pat there? Yeah, Pat was there because I didn't have a key, so he had to open up. So did you arrive there before Mick and Jackie? I can't remember, I don't know. Right. But they certainly came round there and they had Mick's red truck and Pat helped us, so I didn't really have much stuff to move, to be honest. All I had was my son's bits really, some clothes, a wardrobe, chest of drawers. It wasn't a massive amount to move anyway. So where did you take it all? I took it all round to Great Gregory. Right, and Pat didn't know where you'd gone? No. Right, so that must take us to around the middle of November? November, possibly, yeah. So were you aware at this stage that Mickey and Pat got something going on, business-wise, or they were dealing together? I made assumptions as to what Pat was doing, but I didn't actually know for certain. What were your assumptions? Well, he was saying, oh, I'm going to have some money soon, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. We didn't really have any conversations as such when he was out. The day he helped me move, there were people coming in and they all went into the bedroom and whispered and walked out as we were moving things. I mean, it was quite obvious what was going on, you know. What do you mean? Well, I think he was dealing in drugs. And people were going there to buy drugs from Pat, or Pat was buying them from these people. I don't know if it had anything to do with drugs that day, but it certainly looked suspicious because they went into another room and were whispering and then shut the door. And where was Pat getting his drugs from? I don't know. I don't know where he got his drugs from. And what about Mickey? What about Mickey? What did you feel about him at this time? Well, nothing. I mean, I just felt that he was my friend as always. I've never had any business dealings with people, so I've got no reason to ask questions or anything. Did you think that he was supplying drugs to Pat? No, I didn't. Did you think there were any drug connections between Mickey and Pat? I think possibly. I mean, I knew Mick was in prison before for importing cannabis, but I think that was Pat's intention, if you like, in continuing his friendship with Mick. Was it the fact that you were closing your mind to it? Possibly, yeah. Did you think at that stage that they were arranging something? I didn't want to know anything, to be honest. So on what basis did you form that opinion then, that Pat was going to start possibly and try and start business with Mickey? Oh, I didn't form that. Not that he was trying to start business with Mickey. I think Pat always had motives behind his friendships in the last few years. He used to run my friends down saying, oh, they'd not got nice houses or they didn't have a lot of money. He didn't think there was a reason to be friends with them, whereas he always had a motive for the friends he chose. So, would he be selling the drugs that Mickey could import? Oh, don't know about that. I mean, certainly Mick did import drugs, but I'm not sure if it was with Pat. Were you aware that whether Mickey was importing drugs at this time? No, I wasn't aware of that at all. Were you aware of anything in relation to what Mick was doing? No, every time I spoke to Mick and Jackie, Mick was always in his garage doing welding and trailers and bits. I mean, every time I saw Jackie or spoke, he was always in his garage working hard at doing things like that. I mean, he did my driveway for me at Gordon Road. He was working hard as far as I know. Had he done some kitchen work or something like that for you? Yeah, kitchen. Right, so we're reaching the stage then that you think Pat would have liked to have gone into business with Mickey. I don't think necessarily Mickey. There was potential there. I think first of all he became friends with him with that intention because he knew that was what he was in prison for. But then they just became friends. Right. I'm not saying that that's what he was doing. I don't know what he was doing. So, speak to us about the next couple of weeks then. Obviously leading up to Pat's death. You've moved out to Great Gregory's? Yeah. Did Pat try and get hold of you? No, not at all. No. So you're living at Great Gregory's? Yeah. Mickey and Jackie are still communicating between you and Pat? Yep, well, Pat was really friendly with my mum. He used to ring up my mum if there was anything to tell me or whatever. You know, he'd just ring my mum. So they were getting on all right, were they? Oh, my mum and Pat, yeah. They've always got on. Yeah, definitely. So what did she think about you moving out and going to Great Gregory's then? She wanted me to give it another go at Pat, but I said no. And she said, oh, well, you know he's ill. He's got a drug problem. You've got to help him. I just said no. I said, I've helped him enough. I'm not going to live my life worrying about somebody else all the time. I tried, as far as I was concerned, to help him, to get off the drugs, but he just wasn't concerned. He didn't want to do that. He wanted to live the high life. You know, doing what he was doing. Mixing with people like Tony and people which I just didn't want to. Right, okay, so carrying it on then. You're at Great Gregory's, Pat's doing whatever. Just tell us what's happening now then. Nothing really. I was just getting on with it. I spoke to him a couple of times, but I didn't give him my number. As I say, the day he died, I saw him round my mum's. I think I've told you that already, haven't I? Let's talk about that day then, the day of the murder. So we're now looking at the 6th of December 1995. Yeah. So where are you now in the morning? Are you still living at Great Gregory? I was living at Great Gregory, yeah. Right, talk us through that then. My friend Carol was going round my mum's. She's a hairdresser. She was going to do mine and my mum's hair. Carol? Carol. She's married. She lives in Hornchurch. She was there already when I got round because I drove. It was snowy and my car broke down. The golf? Yeah, so I walked with my son and I was really annoyed by the time I got round to my mum's. Where did it break down? Along Great Gregory. Great Gregory's a long road and it broke down along there and I'd walked to a phone box. I'd left my son in the car and there were two schoolboys walking along the road and I said, if I give you £1 each, would you give me a push? So we've got in the car and we got it started after quite a while pushing it in the snow. Who did you phone from the phone box? Well, I say I went to a phone box. I don't think I went to a phone box. Okay, that's a good place to leave it as the tape's ending here, Sarah. Okay, the time now is 1:42 p.m. Okay then, Sarah, so just to continue, you're at Great Gregory's, the car's broken down, your son's in the car, you mentioned a telephone box and I asked you to think whether you used a telephone box. Yeah, so just talk us through that a bit more. Okay, I'm trying to think where. I know whereabouts I broke down and I think there's a telephone box on a green. I think I may have called my mum or tried to get in touch with Pat. I can't remember. It wouldn't have been Pat, no. I wouldn't have phoned Pat because obviously if I'd broken down in Great Gregory, he'd have known that I lived there. I didn't want him to know where I lived. Okay, so you've driven off from the hostel I lived at? No, I was living at Great Gregory at this time. Oh, okay. I lived at the top of Great Gregory. I'd broken down at the bottom of Great Gregory. It's a long road. Okay, then how far is that from your mum's house? My mum lives at Kingswood, so like a mile or two. Right, so what happened then? Then two boys come out, I think it was lunchtime at school. I gave them £1 each and asked them to push the car, but it was quite snowy. Finally, I got the car going and I went round to my mum's. And when I got round there, I was annoyed because I'd had to walk with my son. I don't think I walked back to the Great Gregory house though. I'm sure I went to the phone box. I can't remember. Right. So what time did you get to your mum's? I haven't got a clue. Morning, afternoon? Probably about lunchtime, I would have thought. Usually around 12 or something. And Carol was there with your mum? Carol was there, yeah. Right, what happened? Well, Carol's got 2 children as well, so I said while I was late, the car had broken down and I used my mum's phone to ring Pat. I phoned him up and he was in a really bad mood. I just said, look, the car's broken down again. Right, and where did you phone Pat? At Gordon Road? No, on his mobile. Was that the same mobile that you'd had? No, his girlfriend had got that one. He had got an orange phone. So his girlfriend, who's that? Lizzie. She had your old phone? Yeah. And he had got a new one? Yeah. How do you know she had that phone? Because I'd phoned it and she answered it a couple of times. I phoned to get in touch with him and she had answered, I think. So yeah, I phoned Pat and said, when are you going to get me a new car? Because this one keeps breaking down. I couldn't have it breaking down and everything. And he went mad because he said, oh, he was busy doing things and we had an argument on the phone. A bad argument? Yeah, just an argument. Pat just going mad. Yeah, I don't suppose any worse than the others we'd had, but yeah, it was quite a bad argument. Was he threatening you or? No, I don't think he was threatening me, not that I can recall. But he was certainly going mad. Then I went into the other room and phoned him back to try and calm him down. He said, where are you? I said, I'm at my mum's. And he said, right, I'm going to come round there and get the car. I'll be there in a minute or so. But this was all sort of shouted. It wasn't, oh, I'll be there in a minute. It was shouting and everything. So with that, I've run out to the car to get the bits like my son's baby chair and bits out of the car because I thought he's just going to take it. He pulled up in the Range Rover with Tony and Craig, and he got in the car and it started first time. He just started shouting at me saying, oh, I was this, I was that, and everything else because it started when he got in it. He come into my mum's house shouting at me, and I think Tony and Craig, well, certainly Tony come in and got hold of him and said, oh, come on, let's go. Pat had got in the car. I hadn't even got everything out and he was just throwing it all out of the car, and Tony and Craig were helping me pick it up outside, and Pat just sped off in the car. That was the last time I saw him. And what time was that roughly? I don't know what time. It was in the afternoon, possibly 2 or something. I don't know. It might have been 12. I don't know. Okay. Then later on that night, I went back to Great Gregory. It was about 6 o'clock or something. I've given the police my itemised phone bill. I phoned him up on his mobile because I was a bit worried as he'd gone mad that day round my mum's, and I was just a bit worried about it. So I phoned him up to apologise, although I didn't see it was my fault. I phoned up to apologise to calm him down and see what he was like now. Go on, Sarah. So I phoned him up and he couldn't have been nicer. And I was really pleased because he said, oh, don't worry. Sorry for going mad and everything else. Then he said, listen, I can't talk at the moment. I'm with people. Which he didn't say who he was with. He just said he was with people at the moment. Which he wouldn't have said if he was just with Tony and Craig still, because he would have, well, he just would have said that. He said, oh, I'm with people at the moment. And I said, oh, I'm really sorry. I shouldn't have rung you up. You've got enough to do and all that. He said, give us a call tomorrow. We'll sort it all out. Like, nicely again, you know. And that was that. So was that unusual then, for him? No, because he was like that. One minute he was nice, then he'd lose it. So how long do you think that conversation lasted? I don't know. I mean, a minute or 30 seconds possibly? I don't know. I gave the police all the bills and everything with it on, so... Right. Regarding the time, I think it was about 6 or 7. Right, so you say he's with people and you've no idea who he was with. Do you know where he was? I haven't got a clue, but he wouldn't have said that if he was just with Tony and Craig. He wouldn't have said, I'm with people at the moment, so... Right, and then what happened? Well, my mum looked after my son for me. I drove over to Mark's that night and I'd borrow my sister's car. Then we went to Holland's Wine Bar round the corner. We sat there and had a few drinks. I can't remember if I stayed the night or not. I can't remember. My mum will remember because she was looking after my son. Can you try and remember, because it's fairly crucial? I think I must have done because we had a drink, so I must have done. Yeah, that's right. I picked up my son before my mum went to work the next morning. So what time did you make the call? Between 6 or 7, you think, to Pat, yeah? Yeah. How long after that was it you went out with Mark? I was getting ready to go out then. Right. Yeah, I was getting ready to go out then and I just wanted to make peace with Pat before I went out. You were going out with Mark? Yeah. As I say, Mum babysat. I'm sure that I stayed the night and went probably 8 o'clock in the morning to pick up my son. I certainly went home the next morning. Mark had the day off. I went to pick up my son, then went back to Great Gregory. I was getting some stuff ready because I was going to go back over to Mark's in the afternoon. And while I was at Great Gregory, my friend Ange phoned up and said, have you heard about those 3 men that have been shot? And I said, no, what are you talking about? Ange? Who's this? Ange, Angela Gay. Ange is my friend I went to school with. And what time was this? I don't know, sort of 11 or something. And this was at Great Gregory. 10:30, possibly 11. Yeah, Great Gregory. So what do you think she meant by that? To be honest with you, at the time, I didn't think anything of it at all. She might not have said 3 men have been shot. She may have said 3 men have been found or some men have been found. I can't remember the exact words. It didn't really sink in because I went back over to Mark's with my son and made lunch. How I actually found out was Mark's friend, Mark Brown. He works in Southend. I think he was at work when he phoned up and he'd phoned Mark and said, now I remember this bit word for word because we were sat in the front room and my son was having a lunchtime nap and the phone went. Mark Brown phoned and said, you know that girl Sarah? He said, her other half, he's been found. We just couldn't believe it. And he said, she's here now. And Mark on the other end went, oh my God. You're saying you're at Mark's? Yeah. I take it that was Booth's Court? Yeah, that's right. And what time would it have been that call came through to him? I don't know. I'd say after lunchtime because I went round to Gordon Road after that. Did you speak to Mark Brown on the phone? No, I didn't talk to him, no. I was sick actually. Did you phone Mickey and Jackie? Well, I would have done, but I can't remember when. I think I might have gone down to the police station then in Basildon. I can't remember. Why did you go to the police station? I was taken by police. Right. Who did you speak to there? I think it was Brendan Foy. Did you speak to anyone else whilst you were at Booth's Court other than Mark? No, not at all, no. Did you make any phone calls there? None at all, none. I just literally got my son ready. Did Mark not go with you? My God, no. No, he stayed there. He said, let me know what's happening. Right, okay, so over the next few days, particularly what I want to ask you about is the mobile phone. The mobile phone that you got back off Liz. Right, yeah. Tell me about that and why that was so important. Important? Mm-hmm. It wasn't that important to get it. I think it was just because she was running up a bill and I didn't have the money to pay the bill on it. I think I spoke to her and said the bill was going to be huge or something because she was ringing everyone up. I was advised to get it back off her from somebody. It may have been John or it may even have been the police. I don't know, but it certainly wasn't a big thing. Why? Because it was in my name and she was using it and running up a bill. So you mentioned John. John phoned her? Yeah, John from Kent, John McCarthy. I can't remember how I first spoke to him, I haven't got a clue, but I remember him saying to me, oh, who's got the phone? I've tried to get in touch with you, and it was the phone that Lizzie had. He said that she was rattling off about, 3 men had been murdered, and it was like a big sort of show. John was disgusted because he said, what on earth's going on? Who's she? So I arranged for some police officers to meet Lizzie around the bungalow because she wanted to get all her stuff out and she left the phone there. So your intention was to get back the phone that you had registered in your name, is that correct? Yeah, but it wasn't really a big thing. I think, to be honest with you, it was more of a big thing to get her stuff out the bungalow and get the key for the bungalow. It wasn't like a big thing to get the phone at all. You didn't ask for the orange phone? From who? Her. Lizzie. She didn't have that. Pat had that when he died. Yeah, she didn't have that. But you didn't know that. Well, no, obviously I didn't know that, but to be honest with you, I can't remember. So what's it got to do with this John bloke? Well, it's just a conversation I remember at the time. John saying, oh, I phoned to try and get in touch with you, Sarah, and some girl answered the phone. And it was all like a big circus to her. That's just a conversation I remember. I don't know why. So you didn't ask John to try and get the phone back off her? I don't remember there being a big issue about the phone, to be honest. I remember I was in the bungalow and my friend Sue was there. She might be able to remember because there was a couple of police officers there that said, we'll be here just in case there's any sort of animosity. I remember she went and got some CDs and she said, is it okay? Do you want to check these? I said, no, don't be silly. Just, take them. There wasn't any issues. So there wasn't any animosity between the two of you? Not at all. In fact, I even took her phone number and said I'd keep in touch with her with what was happening and to do the same with me. What number did you give her? I don't think I gave her the Great Gregory number, but I certainly took her number because I've got it in my book. So did John say try and get the phone back? No, I don't think so. I think it was just sort of said. It's somebody you've not mentioned before, so you only mentioned him now? Yeah, because that just rung a bell. Who's he then? John, it just rung a bell. I remember him saying that he'd phoned her up as he was trying to get in touch with me. I remember about the phone, that's all. It's no sort of relevance anyway. It's relevant to us. Well, I don't know. It may have even been that the police told me to get it back. I don't know. But as I say, I don't remember a big issue of it being made. I just remember that day. I don't even remember how many days after it was that I went round there. Is it Chris Winston? I think he was there that day. But I can't remember who he was with. But he was really nice. It was like, well, there's the phone. It wasn't like, oh, give me that or anything like that. It was all nice. But what you're saying is that at no stage did you try and get the orange phone back off her? No, because she didn't have that. Pat had that. The phone that was in my name she was using. Yeah, but I'm saying you were aware that Pat had another phone? Yeah. You didn't approach her with a view to getting that phone back? No, not at all. Did John? Not that I can remember. Well, no, because why would we? Pat would have had it with him. That's why I'm asking. No, I wouldn't have done. No, not at all. I mean, the inference is, Sarah, that you've done that. Yeah, because there's information on the phone. Yeah, but how would there be? Because I wasn't using the phone. No, but Pat's using the phone. Yeah. Hang on, what are we talking about? The orange one or? Right, Sarah. What is being said is that you were keen to get back the orange phone. The inference from that is that you were aware that there was something on that phone that could be used in a police investigation. Not at all. Not at all. I may have possibly asked for it back with Pat's property, but that's it. You didn't ask John to try and get it back off her for you, the orange phone? I asked John to try and get the orange phone. Why would I? Pat would have had it with him. Well, the inference is that John has also tried to phone Lizzie to try and get that orange phone back. Has he? The orange phone suddenly becomes a crucial issue to everybody. Well, it's the first I know of it, I'm afraid. I may have asked about it regarding Pat's property, but certainly not at the time. That's one of the reasons that you're here today. Yeah. I know that you might think it's irrelevant, but if we believe what you're saying, then yes, I can see why you're saying that. Yeah. But if I take it from the information that we've been given that the orange phone becomes a crucial issue to both you and John, what's his surname, McCarthy? But the orange phone was never mentioned with John as far as I'm aware. It was always just to get the phone off Lizzie because it was in my name. The orange phone wasn't in my name, that was in Pat's name. So you had no emergency about the orange phone? Absolutely not, no. You hadn't been asked to try and get hold of it for any reason? Not at all, no. And you didn't ask John to get hold of it? Not at all, never. So if he was trying to get hold of it, if he was, then it would be for a reason that you're unaware of. Definitely, because I wasn't even aware there was an issue with an orange phone. Who is this John? I mean, it's the first time you've mentioned him. He's not a friend of Pat's or anything when you haven't mentioned it before? Yeah, he was a friend of Pat's. He lives in Kent. He's also a friend of mine. He lent me the money to get Pat buried because I didn't have anyone come forward to bury Pat, and John was really good and said, you know, if there's anything I can do. Why didn't Mickey give you the money for it then? Mickey? Mickey Steele? Well, because he didn't have any money. I think he gave it all back to him when he came out. Pat's money, but what about his own money? I don't think he had any of his own money. I don't know. I mean, was Mickey at the funeral? No. Jackie? Jackie was, yeah. Why wasn't Mick there? Because he was on bail for something and he had to report. To police, I don't know. All I know is that he was on bail for something and he couldn't attend because he had to report somewhere. But Jackie did? Jackie came, yeah. Did you think that was unusual, bearing in mind how close you described Mickey and Pat were? I don't think I did at the time because it was said that Mick can't attend because he's on bail. I wasn't really sort of thinking. I mean, I'd broken up with Pat. I was still extremely upset and I wasn't really thinking it was unusual or anything. I had all the funeral to arrange. Is John McCarthy a mate of Mickey Steele's? Not as far as I'm aware, no. I mean, John McCarthy was really nice and just said, if there's anything I can do. I said, I hope you don't mind, but the police have taken some money from the bungalow and I've got no money to bury him. So he came down and lent me the money and I arranged a funeral. So you're fairly close to John McCarthy to be able to approach him like that? I still talk to him now and again, but I wouldn't say he's really close. I mean, we talk on the phone now and again. He'd ring and say, how's things? Do you need anything? Just that sort of relationship. Is your son all right? Does he need anything? Have you got any idea at this stage who had killed Pat? No, none at all. I still haven't. I still don't think it's Mick. I know a lot of people are saying that, but I still don't think he's capable of that. I know Mickey really well and I don't think he would be able to look me in the eye. I don't think he'd be able to look in my son's eye. We saw him a couple of days afterwards and I just don't think he'd be able to do that. When did you see him? He came to Booth's Court with Jackie. So they knew where Mark lived? They had never been there before. I can't remember where we met them. We went to a pub like a Beefeater pub in Brentwood and we were just sitting talking about how shocking it was. What was he saying about it then? I can't really remember any conversations. There was a lot going on at the time and obviously it's really hard to remember. I just don't think he'd be able to sit there. I mean, he was sitting there with Pat's son and with me. I just don't think he'd be able to sit there and look us in the eye. He was really soft. He's lovely to my son. I just don't think he'd be able to do that. Obviously, I don't know everything that's happened, but I just don't think he's capable of that sort of thing. I really, really don't. We obviously do. Well, obviously, yeah. The inference is that you've at some stage become aware of it. Aware of the fact that Michael Steele murdered Pat Tate. And that if you were aware of it before Pat got shot, why you then acted like you did in trying to get back the phone. Yeah, but I didn't. Do you see the way these inferences can be drawn on you, Sarah? Of course, it must look terrible, but yeah, I'm good friends with him. I'm not going to deny it. They've been so lovely to me. You're having hassle with Pat? Yeah, but do you think someone's going to murder someone just because I'm having hassle? That's just ridiculous. You knew Pat wanted to kill Mickey. You told Mickey that Pat has got a threat on his life. No, I didn't. How many days after Pat was found dead were you in the Beefeater with Mickey Steele? A few days. 2? Possibly 2, possibly 3, 2 or 3. Okay, Sarah, there's some more questions we want to put to you, obviously, in relation to the offence for which you're in custody for. I'll just remind you that at the moment it's attempting to pervert the course of justice, and the main throw of that being the fact that you knew there was animosity between Pat Tate and Michael Steele. There was animosity between Pat and loads of people. But the allegation is that you were party to it, and the inference, particularly what we're talking about, is the mobile phone, in the belief that it is important evidentially to the police and their inquiries, and that you made yourself busy to get the phone back. That's the implication. That's one of the reasons for your arrest today. Well, that's the first I've heard of the phone, I don't know. Okay, Sarah, it's an emotional time, and there's things that we're sort of outlining that if you didn't believe them before or you weren't aware of them before, then yes, there's going to be some things that cause you some distress and emotion. But we're going to take things as we find them, okay? Now, as I outlined to you earlier, you are here under arrest for attempting to pervert the course of justice. Can you explain to me what that actually means in conjunction with what has happened? That specifically comes within relation to the phone. Now, that comes from there. That's the physical bit of the evidence. But what we're saying is that, did Sarah know that Pat Tate was going to be murdered? Right. Did she, for whatever reason, arrange or was aware that this was going to occur? Right. Now, we've gone through quite a lot of stuff beforehand. Now we've spoken to you about the endowment policy at some length. Yeah. Now, it could be seen that there you are, Pat's in prison. You're arranging to buy a house, and at the last stage, Pat goes on as a life on the endowment? Yeah, we asked you about that at some length. Now, was that for any other reason then, other than the fact that you were concerned for your son? I'll put it to you, was it for the reason that you knew Pat Tate was going to be killed, and therefore you would be the benefactor? Absolutely not. In no way whatsoever. No, that wasn't what happened, no. Not at all. I mean, I can understand people thinking that now, of course. I can understand what you're saying, but please believe me, absolutely not. I mean, no. Were you aware that Michael Steele and Pat Tate were organising the importation of drugs into this country? No. Did you have an inkling that they were? Yeah. Prior to Patrick Tate coming out of prison from Whitemoor Prison, October 1995, were you aware of any importations that they had conducted together? No. Did you have an inkling that prior to that date that they had? No. So it was purely when he came out of prison? Yes, and I don't know for a fact anything happened, but yeah, I had suspicions of things. What were your suspicions? Well, I can't actually put them into words. What? I don't know. It was just suspicions of what Pat was doing. He was saying he was going to have some money soon, you know, things like that. Because of a deal with Mickey? No, he didn't say because of a deal with Mickey at all. No, he didn't say that. He was saying that he was going to have some money soon. He'd just come out of prison. I mean, he had a car site, but that had gone downhill from what I knew. And I mean, there's only one way he'd get money, isn't there? So I assumed it was that. But no, I didn't know of any particular deals or anything they were doing. But were you aware of the fact that the two of them were meeting together out of your presence? No. Or phoning each other, in contact with each other? I mean, I thought they were still in contact with each other because they were friends, but I mean, not to arrange deals. For a social purpose then? Yeah. Right, we go on to the life insurance policy. Yeah. And we move now to November 1995. As you say, he comes out of prison in October. Yeah. Were you aware that Pat was arrested for drink driving in Southend? I was, yeah. I think I was in Portugal when that happened. Was that the holiday you described to us in an earlier interview with your sister? Yeah, my sister, my son and myself. I phoned up my mum, I think, and it must have been my mum that said Pat had crashed Tony's car. I didn't think I knew at the time it was drink driving. Right. Were you aware that him and Mickey Steele were organising an importation for that date? For what date? The date that Pat was arrested for drink driving? No. While you were away in Portugal? No. Had Pat or Mickey told you anything about it? No, nothing. You were totally unaware? Totally unaware, yeah. And you hadn't gone on holiday with Mark? No. You'd gone with your sister? With my sister, yeah. Right. So taking it from there, I spoke to you in a previous interview about things that you told Michael Steele that Patrick Tate had said to you. Now, I would just like to put to you again, did you tell Michael Steele that Pat Tate had threatened his life? No. Were you aware that there was a great animosity between Patrick Tate and Michael Steele? No. Over a cannabis importation that had gone wrong? No. Were you aware that Michael Steele had supplied Patrick Tate with some cannabis? No. That was of poor quality and had to be returned to Michael Steele? No. Were you aware that they'd met up in Ostend, Belgium? No. When Michael Steele handed back a substantial amount of money to Patrick Tate and others? No. The evidence will be, Sarah, that you told Michael Steele that there was a threat on his life, and that if he continued conducting business with Patrick Tate would kill him. Is there anything you want to say about that? No. No. Okay. Did you tell anybody else that that might happen? No. Did you confide in anybody? No. Did you have anybody at this time to confide in? No. Did you confide this information to Jackie Street? No. It's said that just a few days prior to the death of Pat, Tony and Craig, that you were the one that imparted that to Michael Steele. You were also saying at this time that you hadn't seen Mark for some time since Pat came out of prison. Well, I don't know how long it was, but it was certainly a couple of weeks or something. I mean, we spoke on the phone still though, you know. And yet on the day of the murder, you arranged to see him that day. Yeah, but I'd seen him other times as well. I saw him, I think, when I came back from Portugal. I'd seen him other times as well, but yeah, I certainly saw him that night. Were you aware on that evening, on the 6th of December, that Pat Tate was going to be shot dead? Oh God, no, absolutely no idea. Was your meeting with Mark on the evening of the 6th meant to be so that you could be with somebody that you loved at the time that Pat Tate was shot? No, not at all. Was it to say that you were somewhere else? No, not at all. Did you phone Pat at 6:45, 6:44 to 6:45 on the evening of the 6th of December? Possibly, yes. It was about that time, yeah. From Great Gregory to Pat Tate's mobile phone? Yes. And the substance of that call, as you said earlier? I can't talk at the moment. I've got people with me. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Were you aware at that moment that Michael Steele was in his company? No, not at all. He didn't say who he was with at all. Are you sure? Yeah. What was the arrangement that was made with Pat on the phone then? There wasn't any arrangement made. He just said, as I've told you. I just think if it had been somebody that he knew, he would have said, I'm with Mick or I'm with so-and-so. I really think he would have said that. He just said, I can't talk at the moment. I'm with some people. Okay, so prior to that, I know you saw him that afternoon, I think at your mother's house at Ravensdale? Yeah. Prior to that time, when was the last time you saw him before then? If you say that's a Wednesday, the 6th of December. Yeah. So when would you have seen him before that Wednesday? I can't remember. The day before? No, I mean, I spoke to him on the phone and that, but probably a few days. I don't know, to be honest. Right. The inference is, Sarah, that if you did know that this was going to happen and that you informed Michael Steele that there was a threat against his life, that you arranged to be alibied, is the expression, on the night of the murder. Yeah. You'd arranged an endowment policy on Patrick Tate's life. There'd been a breakdown in the relationship with him. But that was all getting sorted out. I mean, that's just ridiculous. You know that's ridiculous. Well, let's look at it in its entirety. That's where we got to this morning. That's what's led you to being here today. Yeah. The endowment policy has been taken out in his life. Yeah, but that was way before. That was like a couple of years before this, wasn't it? 1994. It wasn't if I sort of went out and got him insured and, you know, the next day it happened. Is it correct that you lived at 122 Swanstead with Patrick Tate? Yeah. Prior to 49 Gordon Road? Yeah. Because I think I see it mentioned in an earlier interview when you were arranging the endowment policy that you were living at Gordon Road. Well, that can't be so because you hadn't bought Gordon Road at that stage. Sorry, I don't understand. You were living at Swanstead? Yeah. I said in the earlier interview, while you were still living at Gordon Road, you had arranged a mortgage and the endowment for Gordon Road. Well, that couldn't have been the case. Yeah, because I was still living at Swanstead. Swanstead we hadn't mentioned. I don't remember where I was living at the time. It was certainly the same time we took out the mortgage. Well, I took out the mortgage. When you were living at Swanstead? Yeah, it must have been. It must have been between moving or something. But you couldn't have moved into Gordon Road before all the contracts were signed and the endowments were signed. Well, of course, yeah, of course. I didn't want to confuse the issue. We hadn't mentioned the address of Swanstead before. Right, okay. So when Patrick Tate was in prison in 94, right, putting all those factors together, yeah, the endowment policy, the threats, the breakdown in the relationship with you and Pat, some of which I would say was to do with his attitude towards you and the violence that he could show. Yeah, but he didn't sort of beat me or anything. He just had a drug problem. Well, you haven't gone into that, Sarah, and I don't know what the issue is between you and Pat. You said it's private in your initial interview, but I would suggest that there's some violence or violent behaviour towards you. It might not be that you were hospitalised, but there's obvious aggression and violence within the relationship. He was aggressive, yeah. He was aggressive. So taking all of that together then, on the evening of his death, you're with Mark, the man you want to be with, the man you hadn't seen for a little while. You're making all this sound so terrible. It wasn't like that. This is how it's being looked at, Sarah. Yeah. And that's how it's built up to today. And the fact that there you are, the day after, the day afterwards, trying to get the phone. Is the phone a vital link? But I didn't actually try and get the phone. All I was doing was getting the phone back that was in my name, not the phone that Pat had. Well, the information is that you were trying to get hold of the orange phone. Now, if you were unaware that Pat had the orange phone on him at the time, well, he always had it with him. And I think someone even told me that at the time. I don't know who, but I think the police or someone even told me at the time he had it in his hand. I mean, why would I ask for that back? It just doesn't make any sense. I mean, what could I achieve by getting it back? I mean, they had itemised bills anyway, if that's what you're saying. Well, the inference is that you wanted to get that back for some reason, and you asked John McCarthy to do the same, and through the both of you putting pressure on Liz Fletcher, that the phone was recovered to you. That is absolutely ridiculous. That is absolutely ridiculous. I've never put any pressure on Liz ever. I've only met her a couple of times. I think at the funeral, and the police were there the day when I was around the bungalow. Chris Winston and somebody else, they were there. They can tell you what happened. I mean, there was no animosity. There was no anything. I didn't put any pressure on her. I don't even know who said that. I didn't put any pressure on her at all. But you see how it all looks, Sarah? Well, yeah. How if it was a deliberate move on your part to have Pat removed from your life? But Pat was out of my life anyway. He had other girlfriends. But what were your feelings towards him? My feelings towards him? I still loved him. Of course I still loved him. I've got his son. He was just different, that's all. I just didn't want him in my life as my boyfriend, that's all. I didn't wish anything bad to happen to him. Is it a fair suggestion, Sarah, that the only way that you could settle down properly with Mark and make it more open is for Pat to be dead? No, it's not. No, it's not at all. Because now that Pat is dead, everything is now okay. Yeah, things are okay, but my son's lost his dad. He's dead. I didn't want anything like that to happen. That's why I asked. It's a suggestion. No, of course not. Pat was a good person. He used to be a good person, and then he got a drug problem. But he would have got off that anyway. I didn't want this to happen to him. But it's a fair question, Sarah, that since the time of Pat's death, you have settled in at Booth's Court, Brentwood. Yeah, I have. I mean, am I wrong to do that? Well, it's not for me to judge you, Sarah. It's for me to ask the questions and seek the truth. Well, yeah, I have settled. Of course I have. But, you know, I still go to his grave and I still think about him. I didn't wish anything bad to happen to him. Are you saying it's just a matter of bad timing, that the day after he dies, you plan to move all of your stuff into Booth's Court? I didn't. That didn't happen like that. It didn't happen like that. I didn't move into Mark's until January or February. I didn't move straight away. That's ridiculous. I didn't do that. So it was something that you said earlier that you planned the day after to move some of your stuff out of Great Gregory's into Mark's. No, I didn't do that at all. Not at all. Sorry, I misunderstood what you were saying then in an earlier interview. Can you clarify then, because in the last interview you said that you possibly stayed. You believe you stayed with Mark that night? Yeah. The night of the deaths and in the morning? Then I went home. And in the morning you went home? Yeah. And then you took some stuff to Mark's address and you took your son there? Oh yeah, but I hadn't moved there. What was the stuff then? Some lunch. I went out and bought some lunch. I went home and got my son changed and took some lunch and sandwiches and something over there. It wasn't like my stuff. It wasn't like I was moving my stuff. It wasn't like that at all. Sorry, it was just something you said. No, it wasn't like that at all. Because there you are, Sarah. You're free. You're free to move on with your life. You wanted him out of your life, which I'm not disputing. Of course I'm free to move on with my life, but I didn't want that to happen, so I could do that. To the extent that you've moved into Booth's Court and you're engaged, you plan to marry. So what you're saying is that because this has happened, I can't have a life myself? No. Well, what then? I'm saying look at it in its entirety. I know. I'm not here to tell you how to lead your life or to judge what you've done. I'm just here to sort of show you what it looks like. I haven't done anything wrong. I've just moved on with my life, which I would have done anyway. But you see, looking at it in its entirety, from the breakdown in the relationship, the endowment, through to the information you've given to Michael Steele, through the phones, through the breakdown, the violence, to the stage of you here that you've got this new future, a life with Mark, a nice house in Ramsden, holidays I would imagine, freedom from worry, freedom from violence. Mark can feel free because no one's going to be turning up knocking on his door. That would have happened anyway. That would have happened anyway. I mean, I don't think that would have happened. I don't think you believe that, Sarah, that Pat would have just walked away from you and just closed the door and said, right, Sarah, you get on with your life, I'll get on with mine. So what? Do you think that I'd wanted 3 people murdered so I could get on with my life? Mark doesn't have to worry anymore. He hasn't got the worry of Pat having a mood change. Oh, I'm going out with his ex-girlfriend. He's going to come for me. Mark hasn't got that worry either. It all fits in, if it's painted as black as that. Yeah, but you know it's not like that. You're saying it's like that, but It's not like that. You were in contact with Michael Steele the following day on the 7th of December. You have a meal with him 2 days, 3 days later at a beefeater. Because we were all shocked about what had happened. I mean, well, he wasn't. Well, I thought he was. He didn't come to the funeral. He told me he couldn't because he was on bail for something. It was a lie, Sarah. He couldn't go, could he? Because he killed him. You think I know that? You think that I had something to do with that? I certainly think that you told Michael that Pat would have killed him if they continued their relationship. And you probably told him that through your friendship with him, because as you said in a previous interview, he's like a father figure to you. But you never actually thought the action that was taken would have been taken. Maybe the reasons why you told him were that you were hoping that he might break away from Pat and finish the relationship. But we need honesty from you, Sarah. I'm being honest with you. We think you are looking to stop somebody being murdered, Sarah. We're only here to seek the truth. I'm telling you the truth. We're only here for you to be honest with us. But if we take what you say and take your stance that the endowment policy was organised, you keep saying about that, but that was taken out a long time ago. And taking it further, the phone was insignificant to you. It was just the fact that somebody, maybe even a police officer, mentioned to you that she may have run up the bill on it and to get it off her. Yeah, it wasn't anything. I mean, has Lizzie said to you that I put pressure on her? I mean, I didn't put pressure on her at all. It was all nice. There's police officers to clarify that. No, it would be unfair of me to say that Lizzie had said that. That would be unfair. She hasn't. It was all nice. She got all her stuff out of there and everything was nice. Did Lizzie not tell you about the trip to Belgium? No. Were you, or are you, or were you prior to today aware of that trip to Ostend in Belgium? No. I mean, it's not pleasant, but if you look at it like that, and we will show that there were phone calls made between yourself, Michael Steele and Jackie Street, and have been since the time of the murder. Well, of course they have. Yeah, of course they have. On a substantial and some very long phone calls. Have a look at all my bills. Have a look at a couple of years ago. I've always spoken to Jackie for a long time. I mean, what would the atmosphere have been like? It was a joke with everybody that I'm on the phone to Jackie for a long time. But how's the relationship between you, Michael and Jackie? What, since he's been arrested or since this happened? No, since the murder, before he was arrested. Well, since the murder, I don't know. It's really been the same. I mean, we've sort of sat and spoke. Who do you think has done it, etc. You sat with them and discussed it. Yeah, I mean, I can't say what's been said, but yeah, certainly, of course we have. They're friends. I mean, it's spoken about of everybody, isn't it? So prior to him being arrested, what do you think happened? Prior to him being arrested? I don't know. Different people say different things. What did you think? I haven't got a clue. I don't know. Now you don't, because it's all turned around. What did you think after he was arrested then? Well, I still spoke to Jackie and she'd been crying and I just didn't think he'd done it. Did you have any doubts? I don't know. I don't know. The three of them travelled to that lane with somebody they trusted. Yeah, but they trusted a lot of people, didn't they? Sarah, somebody that you knew very well, or somebody that Pat knew very well, was on a mission, to use their words. Mickey set them up. Threw out the bait of an importation of heroin, the big money, the big time, the big wedge. Suckered them in, knowing they'd be greedy enough to go for it. They'd had grief over a deal, lots of money changing hands. Mickey's told that Pat wants to kill him. He lures them down that lane, a lane they know. He goes with them, but there lying in wait is his friend Jack Womes. Jack Womes appears from the bushes with an 8-shot pump-action shotgun and a sawn-off shotgun. Jack Womes shoots the three of them, Michael shoots Pat. They get back in their car, make good their escape. The day after, Sarah, you're phoning him. Of course I'm phoning him, they're my friends. Did you speak with Mickey at all that day? Not as far as I know, no. So when can you recall that you started ringing him up? On the Thursday? The next day? I don't recall when I did, it's all sort of blurry. I don't know really. I obviously did because they're my friends. I phoned up all my friends. So from what you're saying in the other interview, on the morning of the 7th you went round to Mark's, you made no phone calls from there, and Mark Brown telephoned? Yeah. And that's when you were told it might be Pat? Yeah. And did you leave immediately then? Yeah, I think so. I got my son up and ready and went straight round to Gordon Road. Were you still in your sister's car? I think so, yeah. I can't remember to be honest, but I must have used the car because I didn't have a car. And where did Mark go? Nowhere, he stayed there. He stayed there. Okay. And then you finished at the address when the police were there and you say they took you to the police station. I went to the police station, but I can't remember how I went there or who I went there with. And where did you go that evening after you'd finished with the police? I think I went round to Sue's. Right. Did you stay there the night or did you go elsewhere? I don't know. I think Mark came round there because obviously he was concerned about me. So if you think about that day, yeah, when would have been your opportunity to ring Michael or Jackie? Where would you have been when you rung them? Possibly from Sue's. I might have rung her from Sue's. Right. Can you recall any conversation that you might have had? No. You don't know who it was you'd spoken to? No. It rings a bell that I left a message on their answer phone for some reason. That rings a bell. But I don't know where I was at the time. Did they return your call? Can you remember? No, I can't remember. Right, okay. Let's talk a bit about Russell. Russell? What does Russell feel about all of this? About Mickey Steele? Well, I haven't spoken to him. He's written to me. I haven't spoken to him yet. I was going to see him to see what he thinks because he said to tell Sarah to stop being so naive to Debbie, to his wife, and to give me the message. Naive? Yeah. About what? About all of this, because I just said to Debbie, Russell's wife, that I think Nick's not capable of doing that. And Russell said to Debbie, tell Sarah to stop being so naive. Right, and has she told you that? Yeah. What's she saying then? Just that. I've said, oh, what evidence is there to say that Mick's done this? And they've said, just this Darren guy. That's it. What do you know about Donna Jaggers? Donna Jaggers? Is that Craig's Donna? Do you know her well? No, not at all. I think I met her when she dropped Pat off one day and Craig was in the car. They didn't come in, and then I was shopping with my sister in Lakeside last year sometime. I think Pat was away and she was working at this clothes shop. And she said to me, oh, you're Sarah, aren't you? And she was working at the time. And I said, oh, who are you? And she said, Donna, Craig's Donna. And that's it. I've not seen her since. Are you aware that she's made a statement to us? I'd heard that she'd been helping with inquiries, yeah. And did you know what the substance of her statement is? Not a clue, no. I mean, she says that they were going to meet Mickey Steele that night. Yes, I've heard that. I can't think where I heard it. She said that they were going to meet Mad Mick or something, first of all, and you've arrested him on gun charges or something. Do you know Mad Mickey? I've met him through Pat. Mickey Bowman we're talking about. Do you know his full name? It does ring a bell, now you said that. But you know him as Mad Mickey? Yeah. Does he know he's called Mad Mickey? Does he go around saying, I'm Mad Mickey, or... I don't know. I've only met him once or twice. But Donna says that night they were going to meet Mickey Steele. I've heard that, yeah. Mick the pilot. Right, yeah. Did you not start to think then that... Well, yeah, but as I say, I mean, I'd heard that she said that they were going to meet Mad Mickey first of all. I mean, when did you hear that? That she said it might be Mad Mickey or Mickey the pilot? I don't know who's told me that. Possibly Russell's Debbie, I don't know. So since Russell's been arrested? I think so, yeah. So you've never actually asked Mickey about it then? Mickey Steele? No, because I've not seen him. Have you ever asked him if he had anything to do with Pat's death? I don't think I've actually sat and said to him, you didn't kill him, did you? But I mean, it was just obvious he didn't. But was there a direct question? No. Okay, the tape's coming to an end. Time for another break, okay? Are you alright to continue? Yeah. Okay, Sarah, we're in a position where you've obviously said quite a lot today and you've tried to explain things that have happened that could look bad on you. What we feel is that we ought to give you the opportunity of seeing the evidence that is at hand, that is against Michael Steele and Jack Womes in relation to the murders of Pat Tate, Tony Tucker and Craig Rolfe. If you are to be believed that you were not party to their deaths, that you weren't in the know that this was going to happen on the 6th of December, and that you hadn't arranged for yourself to be with Mark that night as an alibi, which we explained to you earlier. I've spoken to you on a previous interview about the evidence of Darren Nichols and about what he will say, that you informed Michael Steele that there was a threat on his life by Pat Tate. I've told you about that, and I urge you again during this interview to explain to us what your intentions were when you told Michael Steele, what you were hoping to achieve by doing that, and if it was for honourable purposes, if you understand what I mean. Yes, I understand. Then I would urge you that this is the time and this is the place to speak your mind and tell us why. The other bit of particular interest from Darren Nichols' evidence is that he will say when Michael Steele returned to the car having shot Pat, he said to Nichols words to the effect of, I can't believe what that silly cow Sarah's just done. She's phoned Pat on his mobile on the way here. You phoned Pat Tate at 6:44, 6:45 p.m. on the 6th of December, is that correct? Yes. We believe that at that time Michael Steele was in the company of Patrick Tate and they were driving towards Rettendon, and at approximately 7 p.m, Craig, Pat and Tony were shot dead by Michael Steele and Jack Womes. You unfortunately, Sarah, phoned Pat during the last moments of his life. We will show that mobile phones, I don't know if you understand how they work, but they work on an antenna basis where they go to the nearest radio mast and then the signal goes up to the satellite. We will show that the phones that evening of Michael Steele and Jack Womes were firstly in the area of Brentwood, in the area of Childerditch where they met Pat, Tony and Craig at the halfway house. They then drove to the Hungry Horse at Rayleigh where Mickey Steele left his car and got in the back of the car with Pat. And that, when they left there on the way to Rettendon, is when you phoned him. Michael Steele's phone was shown as being in the area at the right time, and Darren Nichols says that Michael Steele was with Pat Tate, Tony Tucker and Craig Rolfe. The beacons show the phones being in the relevant area at the time. Donna Jaggers will give evidence that they were going to meet Mickey Steele that night, and I believe that in the back of your mind, Sarah, there's a nagging doubt that Michael Steele killed Pat, Tony and Craig. Was there at the time when they were shot dead? Are you okay? Yeah. Is there anything you want to say? I don't know what to say. I would like you to tell us the truth about what you told Michael Steele and the reasons why you told him. I don't know when. I've been to the bungalow one day. Pat said something about Mick. He said he was going to go up north. I don't know, a deal or something. He wasn't coming back and he was laughing. Take your time. This wasn't meant to happen. I didn't know something would happen. What wasn't meant to happen? I didn't know this would happen. I was just worried about Mick, and so I phoned him up and met him and said to him what Pat had said. And I just said, don't go up north. I just thought that was the end of it. I didn't think something like this would happen. You were frightened for Michael? Yeah, but I didn't think anything like this would happen. Honestly, I didn't. What did you think would happen when you told him? I don't know. I just thought that he wouldn't go. He wouldn't go and do whatever he had planned. You said something about going up north? Yeah, I can't remember what Pat said. He said something about going up north and he wasn't coming back again. And he laughed and I said, but he's your friend. And he just laughed. Why did Pat tell you that? I don't know. Well, he didn't just come out of it, Sarah. He did. He was like that. And he did. But he hasn't talked to you about anything else? He hadn't spoken to me about anything else. And this day it was like he had to tell people things. What did he specifically say? I remember we were in the kitchen. I don't know why I went round there. I can't remember why he said it, but I remember I was shocked because he just came out with it. About when was this, Sarah, do you know? I don't know, no. After you'd been to Portugal? Yeah. At Gordon Road. He said it at Gordon Road, yeah. Had the Ostend trip taken place? I think so. I can't remember, but I think it had. I think I was living at Sue's when he went to Ostend. Did he say anything else? No. I remember saying, oh, don't be stupid or be quiet, something like that. What did he actually say about what he was going to do? He didn't say what he was going to do. He just laughed and said he wouldn't be coming back. And what did you take that to mean? That something would happen to Mick? That something would happen? And what would that something be? Well, I don't know. Just that something would happen to him and he wouldn't be coming back. Meaning that he'd be killed. Yeah. How soon after did you meet Michael to tell him? I phoned him up, I think, that afternoon or sort of quite soon afterwards. And where did you meet him? At the A12, I think there's a McDonald's up there near Chelmsford. And I phoned him up on his mobile and asked him to meet me. From where? I don't know. Can't remember. Were you on a mobile? No, I didn't have a mobile. Telephone box? It might have been, or I might have gone back. I might have been living at Great Gregory, I'm not sure. I can't remember where I phoned him from. But you arranged to meet him at McDonald's? Yeah. At what time of day? It was in the afternoon. Right, so just tell me what happened. You drove up there on your own? No, I had my son with me. In what car? The Golf, I think it would have been. Right. Okay, Sarah, and was this in the McDonald's or the car park? In the car park. Yeah, and what was he in? I don't know. I think it was his truck. I can't remember, actually. Right, and what happened? We just sat on the bench outside McDonald's and I said to him what Pat had said. It wasn't that long. I don't think anyway. And what did you say to him? I just repeated that he said he was going to go up north and not come back again. What did Michael say? I think he said he wasn't going to go or something. Don't worry, he's not going to go. Something like that. Did he say, or did he seem to know what you were talking about, going up north? No, I don't think he did. But I remember he said, don't worry, he's not going to go. Could you just clarify there, please, Sarah? You say he said, don't worry, he's not going to go. Is this what Michael said? Yeah, I think so. And he was referring to Pat wasn't going to go, or? No, I think he was referring to himself. Don't worry, I'm not going to go. He's not going to go. So had he decided not to go because of what you told him? I don't know if he'd arranged to go or whatever. We didn't sort of go into it. Why was there a big falling out, Sarah? Was it because of Ostend? I didn't think there was a big falling out, to be honest. I really, really didn't think there was one. Did you know that Pat went out to meet Mickey in Ostend? Yeah, I did, but I thought it was all sorted out, and I thought that Pat was happy with that. Did you know Mickey had returned a lot of money to Pat for a drug deal that had gone wrong? I don't know where I heard that, but I heard that it did, and that's why I couldn't understand there being any animosity between them, because the money was paid back. How much money was handed over, do you know? I don't know. I just heard it was a large sum. I don't know, 80,000 or something? I don't know. And where did you hear that from? I can't remember. I know a lot of people have spoken about it. I don't know. Why was there a big falling out, Sarah? Was it because of Ostend? I didn't think there was a big falling out, to be honest. I really, really didn't. Did you know that Pat went out to meet Mickey in Ostend? Yeah, I did, but I thought it was all sorted out, and I thought that Pat was happy with that. Did you know that Mickey had returned a lot of money to Pat for a drug deal that had gone wrong? I don't know where I heard that, but I heard that it did, yeah, and that's why I couldn't understand there being any animosity between them. How much money was handed over, do you know? I don't know. I just heard it was a large amount. I don't know, 80,000 or something? I don't know. And where did you hear that from? I can't remember. I know a lot of people have spoke about it. I don't know. Annette? Possibly. I don't know. I really don't know. A lot of people have said things. I don't know. Have you ever approached Michael about it? No. Have you ever asked him about the money that was returned? No. Why's that? It was never anything to do with me. How soon after the meeting at McDonald's did it arrive at the 6th of December? I don't know. What day of the week was it on? I haven't got a clue. It was in the week. I don't know when it was though, possibly a couple of weeks, but then I don't know because as I say, so much has happened in the 5 weeks he was out anyway. But it was after the Ostend trip? Yeah, but it seems like a long time, but I don't know. I'll just see if I can confirm the date of the Ostend trip, Sarah. I've got loads of bits of paper in this folder. Did Pat ever go up north? Not to my knowledge. I don't know. As I say, that day I was really surprised that he said that, because he'd not said anything before regarding dealings or anything. What did he tell you about going up north? That was all. Literally all he said. Who he was going with or anything? He didn't, no. I don't even know if Pat was going or not. I know he said that Mick was going and he wasn't coming back. Did he speak about anybody else going? No. That's all he said. Right. I haven't got a specific date here, Sarah, but I think it was around the 20th of November. Was it after that? Yeah, I'm sure it was after that. Before the week of Pat's death, then. It would be within a couple of days of the Ostend trip and within a week to 10 days of Pat's death. Is that about right? Yeah, probably. Have you not since Pat's death then milled it over? I have, yeah. But I heard that certainly the three of them altogether had so many enemies that I just didn't ever think it was relevant somehow. I just thought they had so many enemies between them, then, I don't know. There was no way that Michael would have known that Pat had phoned you at 6:45 unless he was in the car with him at the time. But then I think Pat would have said, I'm with Mick, or... But he hadn't discussed his dealings with Mick with you at all, had he? You didn't know what they were arranging? But he would usually say, if it was somebody that I knew, he'd say, I'm with so-and-so at the moment, and he just said, I'm with some people at the moment. Of course, Darren will say that that was one of Mick's concerns. When he came back to the car, that he thought Pat would say that he was with Mick. He knew that if that were to happen, then their plans for shooting the three couldn't have gone ahead, because he mentions that to Darren. Now, is there anything else that you haven't told us? No. No. Can you see how all of this has happened today, Sarah? And how this could have all been prevented if you'd have said this before? I know. You see how it throws a different light on everything? Yeah, I understand. And how it could have been interpreted if Darren is telling us that you told Michael Steele that his life was under threat and you hadn't come forward to tell us since Pat's death. I just thought he had to know. In the end, I mean. I thought that Mick wasn't capable of doing that to anybody. Well, I'm afraid, Sarah, it's true. He suckered them in. Can you see how relevant that is to the prosecution case against Michael Steele? He knew that Pat planned to kill him. Pat always said things, though. Sorry, say that again? He always said silly things. You didn't think he meant it? Well, I don't know what I thought. You took it seriously enough, Sarah, to go and warn him. But I thought if I didn't warn him and then something happened, how would I feel? Like you do now, probably. If that's true, Sarah, then you did it for the right reasons. Yeah, but look what's happened. Is there any other way in hindsight, looking at it, that you could have done anything different? I don't know. I should have just kept out of it, shouldn't I? And it probably wouldn't have happened. But if it's true, Sarah, then you did what you thought was best. Yeah. It's not always the right thing, is it? Is there anything else that we've covered on previous interviews that you held back? Any information? No. Is there anything else that you've got to say to us? No. Do you understand the importance of the evidence if that's used? Yeah. It's quite a major development in this interview situation and this day, Sarah. And I think it's only right now that you have time to collect your thoughts. It's a brave step, but it's the right step, I believe, if justice is to be done, Sarah. Before we conclude the interview, since you told Mickey that at the McDonald's, you obviously had contact with him and Jackie prior to the deaths. Yeah. What, if any, conversation that you've had with Mick? Is there anything along the same sort of lines? No. Did he ask you anything on whether Pat had said anything further? Not as far as I remember, no. No. I just thought that he wouldn't go up north, or whatever. It would be all right. So other than that one time that you spoke with him and warned him off, you never spoke to him since, or he's never brought it up? No, I don't think so. Maybe that's something you can think about. What now? Well, Sarah, this is a major development, and it does throw a light on what you've been saying to us before. I need to now go and speak to my bosses and tell them what you've done, what you've said, and take their advice about the way forward. It might seem harsh, but I'm going to ask it. When Pat told you about what would happen to Mickey if he went up north, could it have been the case that you saw that by telling Mickey that you could get Pat out of your life? No, not at all. No. Okay. And your only reason for telling him was to obviously stop him going up north? I was scared for him, that was all. Is there anything more that you want to say? No. We'll conclude the interview there. 8:18 p.m.